I'm an assistant professor at the University of Geneva, and I hold a junior chair at the Swiss Finance Institute in Switzerland. And I would like to start by thanking the hosts of this conference, or this forum, for giving me the opportunity to present some thoughts. So I'd like to thank Fudan University and the Korea Institute for Advanced Studies. I'd also like to thank Professor Lee for giving me the opportunity to come to Shanghai and speak on this topic of finance and the social economy. So I'm a professor of finance, so I'm probably going to speak more on finance than on the social economy, because I think we are all aware of what that is. But I'm going to try to sort of speak to something that was said in the introduction. So to speak a bit how we can bring together the areas of social enterprise and social innovation with finance. Okay? And so to structure my talk a bit, so I'm going to remind us a bit in the beginning what we typically have in mind when we talk about the social economy. So I'm going to quickly remind us of what we think of when we speak of social innovation and social enterprises. And then I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which I think is a great framework to think about social innovation. Okay? And then in the third part, when I turn to finance, I'd like to speak about impact investing, which is actually a sort of a financial repertoire for social innovation, which brings together social innovation and the social economy on the one hand and finance on the other. Okay? So let me start by quickly sort of fixing ideas to say what we have in mind when we talk about the social economy. So essentially when we talk about social economy, as I said, we think about social innovation and social enterprises. And essentially social innovation are strategies, concept ideas, and organizations that meet social needs. And typically when we talk of social needs, we have things in mind such as better working conditions for employees. We have things in mind such as environmental protection, education, health, and you can probably go on with that list. Now, an important part of the social economy are social enterprises. Okay, so social enterprises are essentially sort of almost profit-seeking enterprises that apply commercial strategies, so typically strategies that private enterprises would apply to maximize improvements in human and environmental well-being. Okay, so to bring about social innovation. Okay, and an important aspect about social enterprises is that they pursue these social goals alongside a potential objective of profit maximization or generating returns for outside shareholders. Okay, so this is just some food for thought to fix ideas of what I have in mind when I think about the social economy. So about social innovation and social enterprises. Oops, wrong direction. Now, I think a great framework for social innovation are the Sustainable Development Goals. So I don't know if everybody is aware of the Sustainable Development Goals. Essentially, the Sustainable Development Goals are sort of an intergovernmental set of aspirational goals that define 17 goals with specific sub-targets. And these were adopted in 2014 by the UN General Assembly. And I think the SDGs provide a great framework and guidance for potential entrepreneurs in social innovation, in social enterprises, to structure and think about, the areas where we would like to achieve social innovation. Okay? So this is taken from the Sustainable Development Goals. So you have the 17 goals. The first one being no poverty, the second one being no hunger. And so you have these 7 aspirational goals with certain sub-targets. Okay, so to give you an example, so this is taken from Goal 3. Okay, so Goal 3 is good health. Okay, so the achievement of good health. Now, one target here is that we should work towards sort of substantially reducing the number of death and illness from hazardous chemicals and air, water and soil pollution and contamination. Okay? And there are several of these sub-targets. Okay? So this is an example of an area where a social enterprise seeking to promote healthy lives and promote the well-being of all at ages could think about innovation. Okay? And then there are obviously other targets. Another one is quality education. Okay, so the goal 4 of the SDGs is about quality education, and one target is to ensure that girls and boys complete free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education. Okay? Now, there are other goals like clean water and sanitation, achieve universal and equitable access to safe and affordable drinking water for all. Okay, so that's one of the targets in this SDG goal 6. And to finish, one is obviously also about reduced inequalities. Okay? So essentially, we should work towards sort of progressively achieving and sustaining income growth of the bottom 40% of the population at a rate higher than the national average. So these are just taken from the SDGs. And I think the SDGs, as I said earlier, is a great framework to think about social innovation. Okay. Now, let's think about finance. Okay, so the idea was to link finance with social enterprise. And I think the link between finance and social innovation, social economy and social enterprise is impact investing. Okay, so impact investing is essentially a form of finance, a form of investing that has two intentions. Okay, so essentially impact investors make investments into companies, organizations and funds with two intentions. Okay, so the first intention is to generate a social and environmental impact. Okay, so to generate social innovation to some extent. And then the second objective of impact investors is to generate a financial return. Okay, so impact investing is really about promoting the social good, but also generating a financial return alongside. Okay? And essentially impact investing is characterized by 4 elements. And I'm going to go through all 4 of these elements and then give you an example of an impact investment fund that is active in China. Okay, that's going to wrap up my presentation. So how am I doing on time? Good so far? Okay, good. Okay, so as I said, there are 4 characteristics that characterize impact investment. The first one is intentionality. Then the second one is investment with return expectations. So impact investors have return expectations. Then there are obviously some impact investors that have higher return expectations than others. Okay, so there's a sort of a continuum or a range of return expectations. And then there's a very important element to impact investment, which is about impact measurement. Okay, so the social and environmental impact measurement. Now let's go over these one by one. So the intentionality. So as I said, an impact investor's intention is to have a positive social or environmental impact through his investments. Okay, so there's this intention of generating social and environmental impact. Then secondly, there's this idea of it being an investment with return expectations. Okay, so essentially impact investments are expected to generate a financial return. Okay, so it shouldn't be confounded with philanthropy. Okay, so philanthropists do not necessarily seek a financial return or to profit from their activities. Impact investors do. However, you should see sort of philanthropy and impact investing as complements, because impact investors can pursue the same objectives as philanthropists. Just the tool they use is different. Okay? And potentially impact investing, for instance, if you are a foundation, that gives out grants in terms of philanthropy, you can achieve impact, but a foundation might generate a much higher impact by actually leveraging its capital through an impact investing strategy. Okay? Because it can invest a much higher amount than it can hand out in grants. Okay? So it is not philanthropy, but it is somewhat similar. Now, as I said in the beginning, there are a range of return expectations So there are sort of, you can have impact investors that provide grant support. So, this would be characterized as being below market in, below return expectations, below market expectations. But then you can have also sort of market rate investments. You can have public equity or even private equity investments into impact funds. These investors would seek environmental and social impact, but would do so also at a high market return. Okay. Now, let me speak a bit to this important fourth element of impact investment, which is the measurement of the impact. Okay, so that's really probably the most challenging. The most challenging aspect of impact investing is actually quantifying the social and environmental impact that an investor generates. Okay, but impact investors, they actually vow to or commit to systematically measuring the social and environmental performance and progress they would like to achieve and report this impact. Okay, and this is intended to ensure transparency and also, to be accountable of the social innovation that the impact investors are financing. Okay, so I think that's very important because, let's say, measurement and reporting of financial returns and of profits has a long history in commercial activity, but it's sort of much less developed in social innovation. But I think it's fundamental to achieving the desired social innovation or social impact. Okay? Now, let me skip that slide and just sort of finish quickly, and I think I'm going to be below time, but maybe there's time for one or two questions from the audience, just to give you a quick case study of, let's say, a fund that claims to be the first Chinese impact fund. I might be mistaken, there might be many others, but this is something I actually did find. So the China Impact Fund is a fund that specializes in the financing of small and medium-sized enterprises that provide environmentally friendly products and services. Okay? And it also funds startup companies with an environmental value proposition, and they focus sort of on the country's base of a pyramid. Okay, so the largest socioeconomic group with the lowest income. And you can actually go to this platform, this IRIS platform, which is a platform of generally accepted environmental and social impact performance metrics, where you can actually look up funds and see what kind of, so the Chinese Impact Fund has a profile there, and you can actually see what kind of measures they use to document their impact, their environmental impact. Okay, so for instance, they would measure like the amount of biodegradable materials they use. They would report on the recycled materials their investment use, etc. So I think this is very important to generate that transparency and that accountability for social and environmental innovation. Okay, so to conclude, I think impact investing is sort of a great way of combining sort of social innovation and social enterprise on the one hand and finance on the other. And I think what's really important is to think a bit these days about financial innovation around the sustainable development goals, both in public markets, okay, so both among listed companies, but also in private markets. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. I don't know if there's time for questions.